you can go ahead.
Okay, so I think all of the members are here for this January 12th meeting of the Marijuana Committee. So we'll call the meeting to order. Are there any members of the public present? No.
Nope, there wouldn't be right now.
So there are no comments from them. We have minutes to approve from September 8th and December 8th, I believe. I think, and I thought we had gone over them and there was just a couple of changes and they were corrected. Is that right, Max?
I didn't do any changes, but if there were, I'll make the adjustments.
Does anyone have comments on those previous minutes?
Not here.
Susan or Renee?
Nope. No.
So accept the minutes as presented.
Moved.
Second, anybody?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there we go. Now, old business. Review the ordinance. And I notice under new business, we have the timeline from now to the election. And they kind of, in some ways, go hand in hand. In terms of reviewing the ordinance, how much you sent us an awful lot of material, Max. And I know I'm a little confused about what else is going to happen with respect to the legislature between now and June.
I did not expect that, Doc. I did not expect the state's draft to be released last week. I didn't expect it at all, really.
Yeah. And will it be changed? Is the state going to make any? Will have public comment on that, and so there'll be more changes in addition to what they released last week, right?
Right. The public comment period would have, I think, it just ended.
Yeah.
But it'll still go out and still going to be reviewed based on those public comments, and I'll keep and I'll see if there's ever any updates on that and try and follow along on that.
I was, when I went through it, there were a lot of changes that were important. Some of them I didn't understand. They seemed like they lifted the limitation on the plants. Outdoor cultivation rules changed. Also, the rules on caregivers that, registered caregivers that simply operated in one domicile seem to be lightened. There seem to be less rules. Then there was more detail on security, locking, depending on who you were. I don't know. It seemed like it might or may not, Renee may have an idea on this, impact what we've gone through or how we conceptualized it. And I don't know if anybody's really had a chance to absorb it. I've only gone through it once, but I think it maybe says that we need to take a hiatus for a while, even to absorb it and then see what happens. It's like a moving target.
I completely agree with you on that one because I've been a caregiver for many years, and that is a lot of stuff that they just threw at us, and we're all trying to still wrap our heads around everything that they want us to do and change. I honestly have some things going on in my life right now, and I have not been able to read the whole entire thing, but I do know that the main marijuana program is getting caregivers together in order to go to the state with our own draft of what we agree with, what we don't agree with. It's a lot that they just threw at us all at once with really no so Nobody really knows what's going on right now.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because I just, when I first saw this, Max, I thought, oh, this is great, but this is going to be changed between now and June. And so I don't, maybe there's some large issues we should be talking about, but I don't think at this point we need to go through all of the details. And perhaps what we should be saying is it's January 12th. Maybe we should meet again. I don't know. We could either say that we'll meet again the middle of March, or we could take what you've presented, what's been presented to us, and divide it up and just say, all right, we'll go through the first 8 items. But then again, if we go through the first 8 items, those could be the first ones that get changed. So I think we ought to wait on this for a while. Freeman or Susan, do you have any comments?
Yeah,
No, I agree.
I
I
would
agree with
really,
you.
I would really like to hear what Renee thinks are the most obvious things that her group is going to go with something radically different. And maybe I could be thinking about those in the meantime.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I'm just, I have the new draft open and it's a lot. It's
It
really,
is a lot. It is a lot.
it's mind boggling. The only thing that I could suggest is, I mean, we could sit here and talk for hours on what we want to do town-wise, but there's really no point in trying to do anything because we don't know what the state's doing. And so, I mean, we're just kind of spinning our wheels here right now that the state has released this draft and of the changes, because, I don't want to waste anybody's time, but until the state figures out what we're supposed to be doing, then it's kind of pointless for us to dictate what the town is going to require. Does that make sense?
It
Well, I
does.
just thought there might be 1 or 2 things that were really jumped out at you or your group that you were really startled by. That's going to change your business a lot.
Financially, it's going to change us a lot because we're going to have to put in a lot more money than we're already putting into what we're doing. We're looking at a tracking system through the state, which the state, we've already been through one tracking system, and before it was even implemented, they changed companies, and recreational is using the tracking system, and it's pretty intense, and that's going to take a lot of setup and training and stuff like that. I'm also, for plant count and stuff, yes, they have changed that, and that just occurred basically this fall. You can buy a bigger license for canopy cover, which is a certain amount of square feet.
500 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
That seemed very confusing to me, that whole part.
Well,
Renee, does that apply to retail stores or to any registered caregiver? Who does that apply to or doesn't?
Well, retail is a different tier basis. Retail does not do a plant count. They do a canopy cover. And it's based on your square footage of your grow facility. So I think it was for a 2,000 square foot grow facility, you could put as many plants in there as you can fit. But it's also a $30,000 a year license. So, and that was the problem with Mainers becoming recreational growers and having recreational stores, because a lot of people don't have that type of money.
Right.
And then you have to have a $2,500 recreational storefront fee, and then whatever the town has decided to put as a licensing fee. I think like Lewiston, Auburn, to have a recreational store, it's $10,000 a year that gets paid to the town. So recreational is very, very monetary. Medical is monetary, but now they're trying to make us a lot like recreational. Same guidelines and stuff. So it's very confusing to us, where the state told us that no, medical was going to be completely separate, but now they're trying to have us abide by the same rules for a different type of ball game, I guess you could say. I guess also they've changed things a little bit caregiver wise with relationship to the licensing. One is plant counts, two is unlimited patients. You don't have to have only a certain number of patients, because everybody can choose their own caregiver. There's just a lot going on, and it's all very bizarre to us.
So I have a question. How many patients can an individual registered caregiver have? Let's say who's
Unlimited.
operating out of their home. It's unlimited.
Yes.
And how many plants then? What would be the maximum number if someone had 200 patients? How many plants could they have? Mature plants.
Well, at a time, you can only have 30 plants.
And that's
At
not going to be 60 now.
What's that?
And that didn't go to 60. It's still 30.
Still 30.
No matter how many patients you have.
No matter how many patients you have
Okay.
per caregiver. Well, hold on a second. Just let me look up one thing right now, so I can kind of answer your questions a little bit better.
Well, while Renee is looking at that, so I guess the question for the committee, because Freeman and Saran, I guess you were sort of talking about this, is going on a hiatus rather than working on the ordinance that we have in town. Like, even if it just means skipping the February.
I think Renee was there as well.
Of just waiting until at least March, until hopefully there will be a better idea of what all these rules will result in. But is that the sense that I'm getting from Susan as well?
Well, I'm just afraid that we're really going to end up with a huge crunch for June. If we don't do a little bit of incremental stuff on this, and I leave it to everybody to decide. I mean, how do you know how much they're going to do? What brought this on? I just don't understand it.
Oh, welcome to dealing with the state. I mean, they do it when they have a chance to do it. Not really sure why it was done now. No idea. This is what the state does to us.
Well, it makes it, and it will make it hard for the voters too, because let's say we crank out our ordinance and it's presented to the voters at the June election. And then the state changes the guidelines yet again, which they will. Which one is going to take priority? Our ordinance or the state's guidelines?
The state.
The state will, yeah.
Even if the town, well, what if, for example, the town said that a private caregiver could only have 10 patients? I'm not suggesting this at all.
Right.
But,
it can't be done,
right.
but hypothetical.
You're right. Totally hypothetical.
Hypothetically,
Does home rule apply?
No.
Home rule would only really apply in very specific cases. Like for example, one thing I imagined is one of the things they talked about was disposal. It had to be in a certain receptacle and whatnot. And I think I said this in the email, but if we want to have something more specific on directions like that, that could likely be accepted. Again, that's something that we would have to have our attorney and Office of Marijuana Policy also sort of confirm. I mean, what we have in our ordinance is saying the same thing. Put it in a receptacle, and you just can't do any dumping in the shoreland zone.
Well, I
It
know
might be added an extra step of make sure it's taken to the transfer station or wherever it. I don't know what Renee does, but wherever it goes. But
well,
something-
as another example, Max, though, on shoreland zoning, for example, the first 250 feet are designated by the state for requirements on where to build, what trees to cut down, But a town can say, no, we want to be more restrictive. We're going to take it back to 300 or 500 feet. That's a very substantive kind of change. And so I don't really quite understand how, if we wanted to be stricter in some areas, what areas could we be stricter in? And does the Maine Municipal Association, have they put out any guidelines on this?
Not yet. I think this from the Office of Marijuana Policy surprised everyone, actually. So,
Max,
yes.
I would like to second what Saran's saying. I would like some definitive legal answer on the extent to which we can elaborate home rule rules on this area, and to see just whatever we decide to do, to see what our rights would be as a municipality in this area, because it would have some bearing on our ordinance to know exactly what the extent would be of what we could do.
Usually in my past talks with the Office of Marijuana Policy has always been it's pretty broad at this point, as long as we're not making it almost impossible for a caregiver to operate in town. Like, for example, limiting the number of caregivers. We can't do that. That's already sort of spelled out. Even if we were to do some zoning related issue, putting in only in the industrial parts of town isn't really gonna, we can say that they still have an opportunity, but when you look at the town map, you can obviously tell it's going to be very unlikely to happen. But, parking rules or just the licensing that we're doing, all of that would fall under and protected by home rule, as long as we're not asked. It's kind of like what Renee's been saying in these past meetings. As long as we're not treating caregivers too differently from other businesses we have in town, if that makes sense. It
does not to me, because we're already treating retail in a different way. Renee's under a different set of rules than these home caregivers are already. So I think we do need to understand this better. And I would be asking the Maine Municipal Association.
Okay. All right. I will.
I mean, I'm really all that different from a home caregiver. I just remove the option of coming to my home and have a private office.
All right. So I will ask MMA's legal department just for some advice on this. They're probably in the same boat we are. They're just looking at the whole thing and saying, okay, here's what's changed. Here's what applies for home rule authority. And I'll see if they have that cheat sheet going on, or if they just need me to ask them directly and they'll give legal advice.
Max, I know that we had intended to get this on the spring ballot, but if we weren't, what would be the loss, or what would be the consequences if we ended up going in November?
There would be just a few months where we don't have the licensing process.
But we haven't had it for a while. What
Right.
would be, is there any profound downside to waiting?
No, I mean, when I sent that out about let's do a timeline, I only did that because we were trying to get this on the November ballot, and we missed that.
Hmm.
But we're very close at this point. I would say I was hoping today we would go through it and see if there's anything that needs to really be added or omitted. I was just I thought we were at the end of the tunnel right here. I thought we were seeing a light. And then, the Office of Marijuana Policy decided to cave in the exit at this point, I guess. And now we have to
Yeah,
find
we were close, but
Yeah.
then they did something,
They
and
did.
it wasn't a little change. They made a lot of changes.
Right, that's what I'm saying. They kind of blocked the exit at this point, and now I don't have an issue waiting until November. I just don't know how long we're waiting at this point for these rules because, is it going to be fast tracked? Are we going to have these rules done and applied, or they'll say it'll go into effect later this summer? Are they going to have the rules actually finished in the final draft form, let's say in May, or are we waiting until like August for these rules to be finalized, and then we're back at square one? I don't want us to be on a hiatus forever, and I don't want us to wait forever for the state.
Do we not have a danger of someone coming forward between, let's say we go to the voters in November. Someone comes forward and says, I could do this right now, so I'm grandfathered and I'm going to be able to keep on doing it. If our ordinance is a little more restrictive.
Renee can say whether or not the state rules change this, but I think the only thing that would be applicable to are the setbacks, really. Someone who moves in, like, if someone was to purchase, I don't know, Benny's, and say, I'm going to turn this into a medical marijuana cultivation spot, or
What's Benny's?
Benny's is the place right across the street from Miller School.
Oh, okay.
The corner
Yeah,
of the
okay.
street, yeah.
Right, the Waldeboro Locker.
Right, Waldeboro Locker. I've been told it was Benny's ever since I moved in to working here, but
Okay, so somebody purchases that.
or
It's right across the street from the
or
school.
purchases a place near Madomic High or over at the Coastal Christian School on North Nobleboro Road. If someone wants to buy one of those, I don't think the state has setbacks on that. Renee, can you confirm that? I thought I don't know. I don't know if
the
it's fine.
does have facts, but this is a perfect example of like what we're trying to do here. Like
Right.
the state has already set the rules for medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. The town can go in. You guys, you can't limit patient numbers. You can't limit caregivers. You can't limit.
No.
But you can enhance a rule that the state has made as long as it doesn't hinder production.
Right.
Thing.
I'm not sure about that.
Well-
One thing that I'm concerned about is that we do not allow for commercial growing in our.
That doesn't really.
That's already a rule.
That's
I
all, I
understand.
was about to say that's already a rule.
I
As long as-
understand that, but if you're a private caregiver and you can have unlimited plants within a particular area, does that not go against the rule that we already have in our town?
No, it doesn't, because it's a state rule. And it's not recreational.
I didn't mean it that way. I meant it in terms of our
question.
town has already said that we don't want commercial growing in our town.
Right?
So for recreational, but if you have you're essentially allowing commercial growing for medicinal purposes. And yet the state's in the process of trying to combine the two.
They're not combining the two.
At some point, the two will probably merge in one way or another. But our town, at least, has said no commercial growing in this town for recreational purposes. What if we wanted to say no commercial growing for medicinal purposes?
Again,
do you
that's something, that I'd have to ask legal about. That's something because it's, again, we're getting into a very awkward territory that I do need to ask MMA what
This has become an anti-marijuana meeting.
I'm.
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
hold on,
I'm
hold
just
on.
trying
Let's can we just wind down just a bit? I know I probably shouldn't say that type of thing, but I will ask all these questions. I know there's that concern about too much growing, or what I believe what Saran was saying, but that's stuff that I will be asking MMA anyways. Just like Freeman and Saran, you did want me to ask MMA what restrictions does the town have regarding home rule authority, because Renee is right. If they say this is what we have, what caregivers are allowed to grow, we're not allowed to really come in and say you can limit that much growth, or you can't limit that many patients. So we need to be very careful about what we do, and I will ask MMA that. And when we do our ordinance, that'll go to the town's attorney to confirm it as well. But please be careful with what's being said at these meetings. That's all I will say.
But also a 2,000 square foot facility is really not that big. I mean, that's
Mhm.
square, not 2,000 by 2,000 feet. That's 2,000 square feet. I mean, that's like an average size home, I believe. I mean, and it's not like an average plant probably takes up, 4 feet by 4 feet. So it's not like, I guess if you all knew more about growing, then you probably wouldn't, you'd go, oh, okay, well, now that I understand it, I understand it. But I mean, a 2,000 square foot facility is really not that big. I mean, considering you have equipment and you have a veg room and, the number of plants that you can actually fit in there is, I mean, I think probably, what does the state have? I just brought it up. So hold on a second. Let me just scroll down. I mean, you can, as a caregiver, if you get your license under canopy, which is a 500-foot canopy, then the most plants that you can have is 60 plants.
Is that the current rules or the proposed rules?
No, this is the current.
Okay.
Oh,
So on your application, if you say, I'm going to go by a 500 square foot canopy, then the most plants that you can have is between 55 and 60 mature plants. Is that about as clear as mud?
well, I'm just looking at it. Let's just call it 50 for 500. So that's 200 plants then for 2,000 square feet.
No, in that 2,000 square feet, you can only have the maximum of 60
At the moment.
for right now.
I thought it was unlimited under the new guidelines, or it was
That's
going to be. What?
It's recreation.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Medical, we are still restricted on plant count, whether we get a canopy license or not.
Doesn't seem fair.
Oh,
Doesn't,
Well, that's how they keep us from being commercial.
doesn't seem fair.
Well, I mean, if we wanted to spend the money and go recreational, we could. But a lot of us have chose not to because it's very expensive. Very expensive. So that's why the state is dealing with all of these outside companies that want to come in and produce marijuana and have stores and stuff, because people in Maine don't have the funds for it.
Okay. Susan, did you have any more comments or questions?
no, I'm just kind of startled by the whole thing. I just see it
Yeah.
as a push to let in the big businesses. And
Yeah,
when I would go to meetings in South Portland, it was all about, how many plants can, this retired person grow in their tiny little home. And
Mhm.
the city council down there was all rah rah about keeping it for the people of Maine. And it just seemed like that has been wiped out.
Didn't happen. No.
And is this because of tax money? I don't know what's driving this.
Well, it's because the state got involved and they want their hands in it and they want their revenue from it.
Well, is it the big businesses coming in already and trying to convince these people into this?
No, it's the fact that nobody knew until the last moment when recreational was passed and then recreational was allowed exactly what the financial burden was going to be to become recreational. So, and Maine got into it a lot later than the other states. I mean, it wasn't the big boom that Colorado or California or, those states out there had. I mean, I think what Maine on the first day of recreational was kind of laughable considering what Colorado did on their first day when it went recreational. So, I mean, Maine was really late on the draw, so it wasn't a big deal.
So just going back to timelines and
Yeah.
seeing the end, in terms of getting it on the ballot, if we do want to aim for June, if 1 week from now the Office of Marijuana Policy decides to pull all this language and say we're not going to do any of this, we're going to just stay with the rules we have now, fingers crossed, then
And we're in good shape.
But knowing bureaucrats that put in umpteen hours, all the bureaucrats I've ever met in the federal and state governments never acted that way.
well, then in the scenario of had this not come out and we were still progressing as if it was 2 weeks ago, the timeline for getting it on the June warrant would depend really on Julie and the select board of whether they want to put this question on the same type of paper that we can use to have the machines processed, or if they don't mind having it hand counted by volunteers, like what we had to do back in November. If it's the former, where we have a deadline, that's usually this. That would probably be April 9th of this year, just because we'd have to get it sent to the state's printers and then make sure the question and everything is all set. But if it's not, if we're waiting, if we can get it for a hand count, then
I don't know if you heard, had a big development in the unfolding spike.
Oh, okay. I thought that was something else. But if it's going to be hand counted, then we likely can have this done first week of May, I think. but I'd have to confirm that date. Because sorry about
So
that.
let's go back to the question of then what if we were almost done. What if we just went with what we have? It's going to get changed anyway. Even if none of that came out,
Mhm.
none of these proposed changes came out, there will be changes in the future anyway. I think it's just goes back to maybe Susan's question of what is in there that is so radically different that might affect our proposed ordinance.
Well, we don't really know because nobody's been able to really read the whole thing yet.
I think Max has.
I've only saw those little brief glimpses that I then sent in the email to everyone else.
Yeah,
But I only saw that stuff because that's, I think, what we talked about last meeting, pretty much. You know,
But
the
one,
disposal, the
disposal. Yeah.
operating out of their cars. I
the
feel
environmental rules got tightened, but on people doing extraction. But the other is they have a whole new set of rules for people who aren't stores and with a lightened requirement. And this goes back to what Saran asked. Can we go beyond those lightened requirements, or are we restricted to those? So I think I can shoot off some of this to you by the end of the week, having read it. But I think you need to go, before we have an answer, we need to go back to them and answer Saran's question. Because those changes might actually change some of what we've written.
okay. And I will ask MMA.
My recommendation is that we, instead of continuing this meeting, stop this meeting. And if you want to see if there's one last shot at doing this, let's say we meet in 2 weeks, having got a little more information from you. But I don't know that more discussion now is going to get us any farther under whatever decision tree we make. I don't think extending this meeting is going to help us at this point. Beyond the very good comments that Renee and Saran and Susan have made.
We wish you had made some good comments.
So do I.
All right. So
But I think we should keep April 9th in mind too. I guess my initial suggestion of make sure we meet back in the middle of March is not good enough. If we think we could possibly have something to present to the select board and go before the voters in June, we should meet before the middle of March for sure. So what's your schedule, Max?
I mean, it works wherever. The next scheduled meeting would be February 9th. That can obviously change if we want to have it a little later in the month or sooner. And then March would be March 9th. And then April, we'd have a meeting on the 13th. So, but again, I'll have to confirm all those days with Julie. She's not in the office yet. And I think what Freeman said, it kind of comes down to what MMA says. Because if I say, here's what we're doing, here's what the state's now doing, what impact is that going to have on the ordinance? And they say, nothing really, because you guys seem like you're getting your local bases covered and that's not going to impact the ordinance, then our state rules, then there's really nothing holding us back from going forward. But if they say, oh yeah, this is going to be a violation, this will be a conflict, and then we're probably going to start from square one. So I should know that, and then that can probably be a better way of determining what meetings we do in the future.
So let's keep our February 9th meeting, I guess. Or maybe can we change it to the 16th?
Does everyone Is everyone fine with that?
Sure.
Yes,
Renee?
Renee, at 9 o'clock in the morning?
Sure.
I'll look into MMA and office marijuana policy to see what their thoughts are, and hopefully there's not too many changes that will impact the ordinance. If not, then we can move on with our schedule. So that's all I have, at least. So I take it we're going to skip the ordinance.
Susan, were you going to say something?
Susan, you're muted.
I know. I have this damn lawnmower out there. I mean, every time I got on a Zoom meeting, the lawnmowers come through. If Renee could, like, just keep us informed, not a lot of work, Renee, just if anything huge you notice is coming down the pike, maybe you could let us know.
Yeah, I'll definitely try to send you guys an email, but I'm not sure because the state submitted this draft and they only allowed public comment on it until the 10th. So, which it came out the 8th, that gave 2 days.
Yeah, they didn't
Whoa.
have much time.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Whoa.
And, basically they are trying to make us abide by the same rules as recreational, which is not fair. They said they weren't going to do that. And so, yeah, it's just a lot. But there's a couple of things that I would like you guys to get on YouTube and just look at in your spare time, like about exactly what medical marijuana facilities are and stuff. And just keep in mind that these are different states, so it's not really Maine based. You might be able to find some from Maine, but not too many people put their facilities on camera. But one is site visit of Supreme Pharmaceuticals. That is a very large cannabis company. And also there's another one that is how much does a marijuana facility cost? It's like 35 minutes. It walks you through exactly what type of building, plant count, stuff like that, all of the things that you need to actually start growing marijuana. So you guys kind of get a cost base of what it costs to start doing this.
You said that was 35 minutes?
Yeah, that one's like 35 minutes long. You could probably skip the really boring parts.
Okay. No, if I find it, I'll just quickly email it to everyone.
Yeah, and there's another one
Thanks.
called Inside a Medical Marijuana Grow Facility. That is I believe, a female-based company in a small town that, kind of relates to us, but you can see,
Yeah,
more about the same no matter where you go. But that will give you guys an idea of what it looks like when you're growing medicinal or recreational marijuana. It's not just a free-for-all. So
well, I think I found the one, so I'll send that to everyone right now. All right, so I'll send that out.
Thanks.
Do the MMA search, and I think that's everything. Is there anything else from any members?
no.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion